regards to designing characters for, say, a show like Game of Thrones, we're very lucky that we're giving the responsibility from production to actually do a lot of concepting and a lot of designs and drawings of the characters quite early on. A lot of our reference and the brief is obviously from the book itself, but also the two main creators, David Benioff and Dan Weiss, have a lot of involvement. We're always trying to come up and either reinvent or create something that might be fresh or hasn't been seen before. And it's great because Dave and Dan, the two creators, it's quite often that they'll come up with something that'll be quite original and something we haven't seen. We have various 2D and 3D concept designers that work for us, and we create various designs, present them to the production, then have a bit of a brainstorming session basically and rule various things out, tweak various things. Then once we have our two-dimensional design, we'll then start creating it three-dimensionally in a prosthetic makeup. So we have a lot of collaborations between different departments, being a prosthetic department. With a show like Game of Thrones, it's a huge family, basically, and we're quite often collaborating with the costume department, be it we're killing somebody off and they're getting the throat slit, and we just need to make sure that their collar that day isn't going to be too high, so it's not actually going to see our appliance. But also finding out where we need to take appliances down to, and coverage on the body as well. Characters like the Night King has sort of evolved over the years, where he went from having all his arms exposed to, as the seasons have gone on, there's extra little bits of armour and things have started to appear on his arms. We work very closely with the hair department and the straight makeup department. A lot of our characters have either facial hair or maybe wigs, so we sometimes need to give them formers, head formers of our makeup, so they can then knot and make beautifully handmade wigs. And with the makeup department, we quite often cross over as well. They may be doing huge crowd scenes, which they need a plethora of wounds or something that they can slap on people in the morning. And we work very heavily with the visual effects department as well. It's quite common at the start of the process and our production meetings with Game of Thrones that we'll sit across the board table and we'll sort of bat it to and fro at each department who's going to be responsible for what, really, practical or digital. Yeah, I think over the years, materials and techniques have definitely developed with prosthetics. I mean, we still go back and use tried and tested techniques that have been used for like 40, 50 years. And a lot of the techniques that we still use today were sort of developed originally probably by Dick Smith, probably sort of in the 60s and 70s, who came up with a lot of the application processes, a lot of the materials, a lot of the paints that we still use now. I think it was when we started on the Harry Potter project, where there was a big advent in silicone materials, and we used to use foam latex was one of our primary materials for a lot of prosthetics, which is basically like an opaque soft foam, which is a bit like upholstery foam in a way. But you had to paint things very differently because it was opaque, and you had to paint things to look like flesh, so it's lots of washes of paints and things, and it's quite a technical process. But when silicone prosthetics came in, you could pigment things and make them quite translucent, very flesh-like, and suddenly it just took the game into a completely different area, where I think I'd say the last sort of 15, 20 years, prosthetics have started to look a lot more realistic.
So talk me through the conversations that you were having with the director, with the other heads of department to create the design of these characters.
Donald, go ahead. It was very collaborative, but really, I'd be lying to not say it was a challenge because we had very little time.
Exactly.
In pretty much everything. So we, all out of kit. I mean, things with Ryan, we were, none of us are really fortunate to do a film chronologically, but this one really was ass backwards. Absolutely, because we had to start from the very final scenes of the film, establishing Ryan and trying to imagine editorially and through the narrative what he would look like.
Right.
And it always, it doesn't always look complicated to people, but we who do it understand, like, that takes a second, and you get locked into something, and you have one opportunity. And it's a one take, and you've established something, and that's it. But I think the pink joy was a huge source of anxiety. I think so.
Yeah.
Because everyone's idea of pink, I think when I left LA, I went into the beauty supplier and just thought, oh my God, is it, we were getting sketches from concept, from the director. Everyone's idea of pink, if you ask 10 people, what is pink? They will tell you, well, this is pink.
Yeah, you've
and
got
this is pink.
20 different shades just between.
Yeah.
And you know, I was lucky enough to have worked with Denis and Roger that I just would go to Roger and say, what the hell, like, what is it? We have no time. It was shooting 2 days later, and we were painting swatches, and he said, bubblegum, just bubblegum pink.
Obviously.
and you know, but you know, a Cuban girl with a, you know, not an ivory skin started pulling a little bit mauve to it.
Of pigment, yeah.
Yeah, and then but that's how we got to it, and then trying to get the blood right so that there was a reflection and this blood looking a little bit pink. It's always a very Roger Deakins thing to have a reflection. And it worked really well and
fantastic.
Made us look good.
And the question is, what color hair is going to go with the pink?
Yeah.
You know, should it be on the lavender side? Not too pink, not too purple, you know, and sort of, so we were testing basically shop-bought wigs because, you know, that's the only availability we had because we're up against it. And that scene was filmed in pre-production, basically. Remember, we sort of like 4 days into when Anna was there.
That was our camera test.
That was our camera test, basically, was that
Oh,
look.
goodness.
That was our camera test.
We didn't have time
Absolutely.
to have anything made. It had to be hit the ground running, basically. You know, and luckily I had some great people working with me that were great with colour, and we were crazy colour, but we didn't want it to look like a shop-bought wig, obviously. And even though she's a character that metamorphs into many different causes, I still wanted to have a strong look, and I had this idea of this sort of sphinx-like character, as sort of like, almost like a sort of predator sort of image, and that's where we come up with the hairdo and the colour and the shape.
Gary didn't look like a Churchill at all, and the proportion of the facial structure is quite different. So I would study Churchill's face to try to put essence of Churchill on the Gary's face, but I cannot change the position of the Gary's eyes to match to the Churchill. So there will be a lot of translation of myself to try to make him look like Churchill. At the same time, that it shouldn't look like he's wearing a mask, because it's makeup, and he has to act through it. So important part is to figure out the balance of what to put on and what's not to do. There was a lot of trial and error, but we figured out good balance to make everybody understand he's a Churchill and make Gary easy to act through it. That's really difficult, and sometimes we don't know until actually we try to put on prosthetic pieces on the actor, because some actor has different skin conditions, and in this case, Gary is, you know, like before 60 years old, and his skin is kind of a little more stretchier than young people. So we had to figure out where to leave himself on, but still works as make him look like a Churchill. So we try to avoid any kind of prosthetic go into his eyelid and around the eyes because its skin is really soft. So it's really case by case. Yeah. If this makeup didn't work, they were not going to make the film. So Gary came to me. He told me that if I'm doing a design, he would take this role. If not, he's not going to do that. So it's really at the beginning, because if there's no Churchill, there's no film. So, you know, I was quite fortunate that to be involved this film at the beginning of the whole production. Especially like a likeness makeup is really hard, and also especially someone like very common face or very famous face, because especially like UK people, like everybody knows what Churchill looked like. My main focus and challenge was to make the makeup look convincing enough for people to understand, okay, they're looking at Churchill. It was really difficult to set on the point, because until the makeup is applied on the actor, I don't know how Gary will act through the makeup too. So that was a challenge to figure out, to have a good balance, you know, not too much and not too less, and it's a good balance to convince everybody that, okay, they are looking at the Churchill.
People skills are massively important in this work, because whether it's dealing with actors, being on set with a whole team, a whole crew of people, or whether in the workshop here where, you know, we can have up to 30, 40, 50 freelancers working all the time, and they've all got to work as a team and interact, and everyone's got to really talk and understand what they're doing. So people skills are vital. There's a common misconception that, you know, it's all just a lot of fun and games and we're playing with monsters all day, which we do to a small degree, but there's also a lot of hard work that's under time pressure as well, and it's mostly freelance, which means you're not always working. There's very few permanent jobs in the industry, so either you've got to be crazy about doing it and really want to do it and practice at home and make things at home and really build on your craft. And if you haven't got that passion, you're really going to struggle and you'll probably find it's not for you.
Remnant of a bygone age on planet Earth.
But the rewards are fantastic. When you sit and watch an episode of Doctor Who, for example, and see that thing you created and dreamt up and built and crafted and went on set with, and then you see it in the context of that drama and it's performing and acting and people are reacting to it, you know, it's just brilliant. It's a